I'm Matt Landau from VRMB, and this is Unlocked, Season 8, First Mover Status. This is actually the final episode of Season 8, Tier. And to celebrate, I have created a very special workshop that's titled, of all things, First Mover Status. And in it, I distill all the first mover tips and interpretations and case studies that we've learned about from our 15 guests this season, all into one succinct formula. The 28-minute workshop includes a worksheet, which is designed to help you zoom in on your first mover strategy and plot out the steps to execute it in pretty much any market. You can access the workshop at vrmb.com/firstmover. And I'm just really proud of this workshop. I wanted to officially thank every guest this season for contributing their ideas and for being first movers in their own right. I think now is the time, as our industry experiences a sea change, to plot out your first mover status play into the future. This is the final episode, and it's also a historic one. It features Heather Bayer, who I call the godmother of vacation rentals, both because she's been refining her property management craft on the ground now for more than 20 years, but also because she's the industry's leading voice. Literally, her podcast, Vacation Rental Success, is the #1 longest running podcast in our industry. And after interviewing more than 440 vacation rental innovators, Heather's voice has become an average of all of them, a balance that reflects us all. I've been referring to this sea change lately, and with many established property managers and owners selling their businesses to consortiums, still not even sure how to pronounce that word, these groups are using technology and economies of scale to implement really the first degree of vacation rental standards at scale. Heather Bayer, the godmother of vacation rentals, just sold her vacation rental management company. And I had the chance to decompress with her on this episode. You'll hear her feelings, her predictions and trends, the stuff that she wishes she had known, and also the stuff that she has learned in the process of selling her business. This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation, and Breezeway, a property care and operations platform. Just like in every episode this season, I've asked Heather, what does first mover status mean to you?
Oh gosh, I guess I go back to the podcast. Because to me, first mover is somebody who gets into a product or a service and they have this competitive edge. And I guess I did it with the podcast way back in 2013 when there were no other podcasts. And first mover status to me means I'm still sitting there 7 or 8 years later as having one of the leading podcasts in the industry. And it would have been tougher to come in 2019, 2020 and try and move through the mass of new podcasts out there.
How long did it take you to no longer be a property manager?
Oh, how long did it what? Take me. Freedom. Well, it's not freedom.
What is it?
Well, it seems a little bit like business as usual at the moment.
Is that because you're still full on?
Pretty much. Although no, there is some freedom out there because I don't feel responsibility anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Something goes wrong, like an owner suddenly decides to sell their property with an entire summer's worth of bookings, and that's not my responsibility anymore.
Did that just happen?
Might have done.
Was it like the same like overnight change in that feeling? Because I remember when I sold my vacation rental company, it literally the next evening I slept better than I'd slept in like years.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know how it came about because really, as I say, nothing much has changed. I'm still working. and doing stuff in the business. But I did wake up that following morning and thought, I could lie in till noon if I wanted to, and I don't have to look at the emails if I don't want to. And yeah, there was. I don't know how that change came about, but yeah, it did.
Do you think it maybe just like the formality of it?
Yeah, I think once I signed that document that said I resign as CEO, and my partnership agreement with my business partner was dissolved, it was that was it. It was like a weight had lifted.
Hmm.
Very cool.
Hmm. Very exciting.
I could go and do my weeding now.
What are you going to weed?
I'm going to weed the garden. I'm going to grow potatoes and do stuff like retired people do, except I'm nowhere near retired.
Yeah, you're going to have all this new free time on your hands. At least that's what they claim.
Yeah, do you know that is the weirdest thing, Matt, that although I'm still working sort of as normal, I don't feel like I'm working
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
normal. I don't know how to define that. I really don't.
What is it? What does it feel like other than freeing? It's got to feel really good.
It does. I'm happy dancing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, physically happy dancing. I go out walking with my friend and I start skipping down the road to say I feel like skipping. And she's putting a hand on my arm saying, "Don't do that. I only walk with normal people."
You're like, I've spent how many years now earning this?
It's 20 years.
Wow. 20 years of vacation rental management. So, first, I'm curious in hindsight, what do you think has changed most in those 20 years?
Oh, well, hospitality has changed. I look back. I tell you what, when I first came into this business and I was in England and we were starting the English company, and I was trying to get some Canadian cottages on board. And I went to see one and I said to the guy, this is fabulous. It looks gorgeous. It was right at the very beginning of the season. And I said, so, what do you do about the changeovers? Because it was quite remote. He said, well, all we do is tell the guests at the beginning of the season that they've got to clean it for the next people. And I said, so somebody comes in and checks it. Oh, no, we just trust them to clean it. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be the one who gets the 25th of August to the 2nd of September,
Hmm.
because that place has not been touched by a professional cleaner in the entire summer. And that's what's changed. At that time, that was pretty much the norm. You asked everybody to leave as found. And there really wasn't any hospitality involved at all. And I've noticed over the years, and we were very much the first company to do this when we ditched that whole leave as found uh, concept. And we said, no, we're going to have every property will be cleaned before the next rental. Which to anybody listening to this is going to go, well, of course,
Duh.
that's what you do. But it didn't. It didn't happen then. It was all leave as found, and linens weren't provided. So you just arrived to a bare mattress, and you brought your own pillows and your blankets, or the comforters had been around since Grandma's day. And we were the first. I think we're the first company to come along and say we don't do this. And we provided cleaning, and we asked that linens were provided. And then we moved to start educating our owners about what hospitality actually was. And I always had this thing that I said to owners when they came to us in the beginning, and uh, you know said, well, it's just a cottage. People will just take it as it is. And I was saying, look, the moment you exchange your accommodation, your property for money, you've entered the tourism and travel business. You are a business owner. And I was getting these weird looks, no, I just want something to help me build my deck or pay the taxes. And we began not taking properties on unless the owners understood that concept of being a provider to the travel industry.
Yeah, I remember. I think some of our earliest conversations, we were sharing that sentiment, and it certainly has become more defined than ever before. Do you think the competitive landscape, because more people now are offering all these new standards that you were a front runner with, has changed the difficulty levels too?
Oh, indeed. Yes. I mean, it's not just the competitiveness with more property managers coming on board. It's the infiltration of Airbnb. And where I can look back 5 or 6 years and it wasn't in our market.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a bit like this, creeping fescue, which is the thing that, I'm going back to my garden, it's the thing that just sort of crawls all over the garden. You can't get rid of it once it's there.
How do you call that?
I think it's called creeping fescue.
Okay. I think I have a couple friends who are creeping fescues.
Well, the type. It's like tentacles get everywhere, and it's really hard to eradicate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened with Airbnb. It just started into our market and began to push north. It started in the city of Toronto and then began to push north, and now, of course, it is every or the bulk of people who come to us talk about Airbnbs in exactly the same way as they talk about Airbnbs in every other country in the world. Well, we just seem to be a little bit late to the market. So that has pushed the quality level up. So that's a good thing, because the whole, this concept of the Airbnb property, and it's beautifully presented, and you have these cutesy little pictures of the things on the walls and the nice signs and close up of your coffee maker, that sort of thing. That's come in and overtaken our wonderful landscapes of water and forest, etc. Um, so qualities, it's pushed the quality standards up, and with the larger number of properties coming on board, both through property management companies and through independent rentals. Of course, the competitive level is, well, the competitive field is very, very wide now.
And do you think, like, you're not going to have to deal with your answer to this question, but do you think that managers who are forecasting the next year, 3, 5 years, what trend do you think they need to be most aware of now that you have this tremendous hindsight and sort of closure in a way of your vacation rental journey?
And it comes back to a competitive edge. It's doing something that other people aren't doing. You can't be run of the mill anymore. I used to have a whole set of graphics. You can get them from any of the graphics platforms. You've got a big set of black and white pencils and then a big coloured one in the middle, or the field of sunflowers with one enormous sunflower sticking up. And that's always in my head. That's what you have to be. You have to be better than everyone else. You can't be run of the mill. There's too much out there just to go with the pack. Um, I can't forecast. We've always had this discussion when you would come on sort of in December time, and I'd say, what, or you'd say to me, what are your predictions for next year? And I haven't got a clue. You know, this might happen, that might happen, but I just don't make predictions. But certainly, as I look forward to the next, if I was staying on for the next 5 years, which I might be, you never know. Um, I'd be looking to grow that competitive edge to say, what can we do that is entirely different from everybody else? And we do it in a way. We do it. I mean, one of the things that we've done, and we've done it from the very beginning, and I think this was an important one, is about pets. We have never charged a pet fee, and everybody charges pet fees except for us, and we can have that emblazoned on the website. No pet fees, because pet friendly accommodation in our area is highly valued, and people will pay extra. So we don't have to charge a pet fee, but that's a competitive edge. So it can be as simple as that.
And I wonder if, I mean, it's easy to say stand out, but I wonder if there's some kind of ceiling that, like, there's almost no more creative ways to stand out short of being your limited edition self. Do you think we still have room to go until we reach that point?
Oh, I think creativity will always be there. There will always be something else, you know, if you just drill down into you know, your persona. And I never forget the one I've talked about over and over again, Maria La Barbara Lamb.
Hmm.
Do you remember that story I told about the Ohio quilters? She had a property in New Brunswick, I think, New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, and it was in a small town. And in that small town, there was a quilting shop. And she noticed that people that were booking her place seemed to predominantly come from Ohio, and they were ladies that quilted. So, you know, that is really drilling down to a very, very niche persona and saying, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to market. I'm going to find the Facebook groups where these ladies from Ohio who quilt hang out, and I'm going to market to them. So no, I honestly don't think there is a ceiling or a limit to finding your audience, because you know if your audience is maxed out in one area, find another audience and build something that will bring them.
More than normal, I'm hearing from property owners and managers lately who have found their little niche. In some cases, it's one property. In other cases, it's 20 or 50 or 100 in any given destination or catering to any given niche. And they are, for the first time, these people whose journeys I've been following, thinking about expanding into new markets, whether it's a new town nearby or even somewhere far away. I think that's an interesting indicator of the times that they maybe have reached a level of, um, I don't want to call it saturation, but kind of the point at which new pastures are worth exploring.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really interesting one, and it's one that we've been considering lately, and will probably move more into that. As a company, we'd always focused just on waterfront properties, and the majority of our competitors just do waterfront properties. But we were seeing so many new properties coming on board in Airbnb, VRBO, that were not waterfront, but they had access to the water. But they had other things going for them, like you could walk to a restaurant. You know, the majority of our cottages, you can't walk to anywhere to buy an ice cream. You know, you've got to get in the car. So, you know, I'm seeing a property this weekend that is not on the water. It's a duplex. It looks perfect inside, but people have to walk to a public waterfront. And I'm excited about this because this is moving into a different into a different market. You know, people who want to come up and they're not bothered with spending huge amounts of money for a family vacation on the water. They just want to come and do a bit of exploring and do some cycling or something like that. So for us, yeah, I can see that. And once again, it's just being creative and looking around and seeing what those different markets are, isn't it?
I also think that new ownership can introduce that broadening of perspectives. I remember when I brought on a new partner for my vacation rental company, he immediately, I was going to say asked, but it was more like demanded that we make some changes. And some of them I was really resistant to. Like one had to do with pricing. He said, we're way underpriced. We need to increase the prices by at least like $50 a night. And I was so vehemently against that because I had always been vehemently against that. I just had it in my mind that we needed to be at the $125 price point. And I kind of just, and I did well with that thinking. But upon bringing in that new vested interest and upon really respecting his business sense, we did make those changes and go figure, they worked. But I don't think I would have done that nearly as quickly without some kind of new ownership.
This is what we are super excited about. The group that we've sold. Well, I say sold. We partnered with. We see it far more as a partnership rather than a sale. they're bringing in youth, vitality, energy, new ideas, innovation. Um, it's going to propel us way beyond the competition. But there's going to be some changes that I'm going to sit back and go, "Oh, I'm not sure that's going to work." We'll see as they come, but I know that they're going to benefit everybody. They're going to benefit our owners. They're going to benefit our guests. They're going to benefit the company as a whole, and I'm quite sure they're going to benefit our staff who have been probably looking to us for some innovation over the past few years and not got it. But yeah, it's a super exciting phase for us to bring in this new partnership and sort of step back a little bit and almost become an advisory board rather than a really proactive presence, if you like.
I also remember upon selling my business, it was really the conclusion that it was in the best interest of the business. That kind of helped me be more comfortable with digesting this new change in my life and made me realize that, wait a minute, like after all these years, I was not nearly as passionate as I was at the beginning of it all. And by placing an emphasis on what's best for the business, which I think is hard for entrepreneurs and passion projects. It's hard for us to do. But viewing it through that pragmatic lens, it becomes much more of a business decision than something that's personal. Did you feel the same way?
Um, to a degree, yes. The decision to make this change was it was related to probably being in it for 20 years. But yeah, to your point, I think there was a staleness there. That there was the we wanted to innovate, but time is moving on. The years are creeping on, and is the time to do this? So yes, I guess there was it was beginning to feel a little. I don't know whether stale is the right word. It just, as you say, just wasn't moving. It was like a current that had got caught up, and now it's as though this Justin and Pete and Corey have come in and they've unblocked the dam. Hey, that's a good analogy. Did you like that?
I was about to say, well, you perfectly segued into an analogy that I was going to use, which is also a water analogy. And I was thinking a sea change that's taking place in our industry right now. And I think you epitomize one side of the sea change perhaps better than anybody else that I know, with some of the absolute best professional managers selling their businesses. And so I'm curious, these individuals you mentioned, who are they and how did you choose them?
Oh, well, glad you asked that, because this was um, it was a hard process. We went to a broker and we said, okay, this is what we want to do. We want to sell our business, and we created this wonderful package that went out, and the interest just came in. I mean, we sent out over 50 NDAs.
Wow. And what, would you just Google vacation rental business broker?
Yes. No, not even vacation rental. It was just business broker in Ontario. We actually wanted to use somebody in Ontario. Um, in retrospect, not sure why, but we did. That's what we did. But and it worked. And then we narrowed it down. We got a good amount of offers. But we did interview, I think, 30 um, sets of people, individuals, groups, and we actually had 1.5 hour to 2 hour interviews with every one of them. It was hugely time consuming. We wanted to talk to people. I mean, one of the basic thing we wanted to have happen is that we wanted our culture to remain, our people to remain. Our people have been with us a long, long time. So we didn't want anyone coming in and just clearing out our staff and putting their own staff in place. That was not going to work. And the moment we had this first meeting with it's a company called Pillar 49. They're a small investment company, Canadian, located in Toronto, and they're run by three extremely bright guys who have worked in the field of mergers and acquisitions before. But they're also very dedicated to the whole concept of our business, cottage country, and because they've all vacationed like this when they were kids, and it was something that sort of, I guess, deep in their veins. So they're young, they're vibrant, they've got so many ideas. So Craig and Craig is my business partner. Um, it was easy. It was really easy, and we had some really great offers for some really great people, and some a little further, outside of Canada. And we we looked at those and thinking, well, we could, sell to one of these wider consolidators who's going to come and bring us under their mantle. But it was a no-brainer once we met the team here. And then for the last 6 months, we worked diligently. They did their due diligence, but we did as well, because we wanted to ensure that we had the right people to take the company on into the next generation, and they are a new generation. Um, yeah, so it's been an exciting time. I mean, they have learnt this business in 6 months. They've talked to so many people in the industry. I think they've listened to every one of my podcasts. They've certainly listened to every one of Unlocked. Um, they know everybody I know now because of that real deep dive into the industry, because they weren't in it before, but they are deeply involved now, and they're going to be fully involved in the business on a day-to-day basis already. They've jumped in operationally already.
And from doing all those interviews, is there anything that you learned that you didn't know ahead of time? Maybe a trend that you observed from folks who are trying to buy it, or question that really seemed to differentiate people based on their answers?
Well, we had such a wide variety of people from different walks of life, from an engineer from Alberta to who just wanted to invest in something, to families, to ex guests, actually.
That's awesome.
So we spoke to a couple of ex guests who were really interested. There were people who were retiring and thinking that they should take this on as a retirement project. Um, and then quite a few couples who wanted to get out of their current downtown Toronto businesses. Um, I don't think there was a theme in there that I could. It's quite a while ago now, so it's not really a theme in there that I could follow up on. Um, and there were a couple that after the calls I said to Craig, these are going to be this is going to be a great match. But it wasn't until we talked to Pillar 49 that we said, yeah, this outshines um, every other potential buyer. And they also wanted to. We knew they weren't going to come in and say bye bye on day one. And there were a couple that where we got that definite message that the moment they took over, it was off you go into the sunset, and we'll take it from here. Um, but this is way more of a partnership that we're going to be involved for the foreseeable future, for at least a year anyway.
I'm also curious if you feel you were compensated fairly for all of the 20 years of hard work that you put in over the years, and if there's anything that you could have or would have done differently that would mean being compensated even more fairly.
I On the whole, I think we were compensated fairly. I look at what's going on across everywhere else. I mean, I don't know what other people are doing, what other people are selling their company for, but when it comes down to it, it's a comfort level. do we feel comfortable with the deal that was put together? And are we walking away with absolutely no regrets? And number one, we're not walking away, and secondly, absolutely no regrets. So yes, in answer to that question, I feel. I mean, there were times during the due diligence when the level of detail that they went to, um, I got really stressed about it, and so why, why are we going down to a single transaction and analyzing it? And now we've come to the end, and I really understand now. And do you know there is one thing, Matt? Though I I had a complete meltdown about 3 or 4 days before we closed, and we you get talking at the end of a deal about what's going to happen on the final day, and working capital, and I had not figured out really what this working capital meant. And to me it's like, well, you're taking away the money that's in my account and it's mine. And I just blew my stack at everybody, the buyers, at my business partner, at the dog, at my husband. Um, I weeded far too much and probably took far too much out of my garden than I should have done.
I could just see you like ripping up rose bushes.
It was absolutely that. And I 2 days later, I was on the rounds of apologies, and it's when I was doing that and thinking, "Oh my gosh, I behaved super badly, and I have to say sorry, but why did I behave so badly?" And it really was because at the very outset, we weren't prepared enough. We were not prepared enough to go into this. I mean, we had our figures for the past 3 years, all the good stuff, but I hadn't looked into all the components of selling a business well enough. I didn't understand from the outset what EBITDA really meant. I didn't understand what working capital was. And there were so many different phrases, different words that were coming up that I should have known about, or I felt I should have known about, but I didn't. And I felt, I've been in this business for 20 years. Um, I'm sort of fairly well known for for having some expertise in it, and I don't know this basic stuff, and it was hugely embarrassing to me that I can talk about so many things with confidence and a feeling of knowledge, but when it came down to this, I was sorely lacking in knowledge and understanding of a process. And yeah, it was really interesting because when I so now, of course, from here on, I'm thinking, what am I going to do from here on? Well, I'm going to start telling people how you go about selling a company, from my perspective, and all the things that you need to know and get it all in place before you start, because we were woefully underprepared.
That's, I think, something that resonates with all entrepreneurs, unless you're sort of a savant. Most of us were not trained as accountants or in business school. Most of us don't organize terribly well. And when you finally swallow this pill that, holy crap, my finances are in terrible disarray, or holy cow, I was completely unprepared for this professional process. It's very humbling, but I think once you kind of take it head on and hire people who can explain it to you, it becomes a little bit demystified, at least.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, we were fortunate that one of the Pillar 49 team, and that's Pete, is he knows his numbers. He really knows his numbers, and it was on the last day that he sort of did this explanation of working capital, and it's just like the veil lifted, and oh, that's what it means, and you're not trying to screw me.
Right. Well, it's funny. That's the same kind of explaining and education that you talked about having made your company successful with homeowners. in the destination. It really is an explaining of something so they fully understand the value proposition here.
Yeah, and it's also understanding where somebody's current knowledge level is and speaking to that knowledge level. I mean, we've been talking to a tax accountant for the past 3 or 4 months, Craig and I, to ensure that we have our tax positioned, all our tax liabilities positioned in the right way. And he was trying to explain this, and I think at his fee for an hour, and we had 45 minutes of his time the other day, and I came off the phone absolutely none the wiser. And then Pete goes and explains it in 15 minutes, like, "Ah, okay, I could have saved that."
When valuing a business, I think looking at the economics, the transactions, the profit is all integral. But how do you, or how did you put a value on the brand that you built?
Mm, um, yeah, that's difficult. I mean, we went to we had the business valued by a professional, and we explored, and that was a lengthy process. Um, that was a lengthy process as he explored what the business was about. He explored the competition, um, and so I think from my limited perspective here, I was comfortable with the value he came up with, based on his knowledge of businesses in our area, and and the competitors. So we didn't really, didn't say, there is a dollar value on that brand. It was, again, it comes down to our comfort level. We had a good idea of what we wanted, and we certainly achieved that, and more. So it was, I I could have stuck my finger in the air at the outset and I said, "Oh, I think we're worth this much." Um, and I think may have come in at a bit less than the valuation came in at. But of course, there is a process to go through, this EBITDA process, and I'd been to so many of same the same presentation at VRMA every year to go and understand what that EBITDA is, which is earnings before the. Pete, if you're listening to this, you, you might be proud of me. I think it's earnings before interest, depreciation, tax, and something else. So yeah, it's an expression that if you're selling your business, you have to learn, because that gives you a figure. And then what comes out of that figure and then there is a multiplier to that figure, and you see that multiplier bandied about, usually about 3 to 5, 3 to 5 times that figure is what your valuation is.
It's interesting too that I've always loved this phrase: build your business as if you'll own it forever, but could sell it tomorrow. And a lot of what we focus on are the relationships, are the team members, is the reputation in town. And I guess in a way, I'm kind of thinking through my own answer to my question. Your brand is what the buyer values. Because if it was to be a company who was going to steamroll the brand and replace all of your team members, then that wouldn't be of great value, versus a group like Pete's, who sees value in all these things and not only wants to preserve them, but wants to accentuate them.
Yeah, exactly. They've seen the value of the brand that we've spent 20 years building, and I think, and if anybody had come along and just wiped all that out and just replaced it, just taken our contracts and replaced it with different branding and a different company, the owners, I mean, the owners of the lifeblood of our business would be jumping ship. Um, but our owners are going to be completely secure in the knowledge that it's business as usual. The brand remains the same, and it will go on in an even better way than it has in the past. So they're going to get huge benefits out of this.
Here are two tools that epitomize the theme of first mover status, the kind of products and services that actually give you unfair advantages over your competition. Point Central provides smart property solutions for smart vacation property managers. They help streamline operations, protect the property, and enhance the guest experience using keyless access. Why? Because guests are tired after traveling, duh. And being able to go directly to that property with keyless access instead of stopping at a manager's office, this is no longer a luxury. This is a standard practice. Plus, everybody loves avoiding extra trips due to lost keys, not to mention the constant cost of rekeying. Point Central partners stay aware with an activity log of who enters and leaves the property, which helps keep track of cleaning and maintenance crews as well. You can also gain control of your utility bills with their smart thermostats. Schedule set points so guests won't be able to drastically raise or lower the temperatures, for instance. You can ensure the temperature stays consistent when the unit is vacant. Prevent costly maintenance projects caused by water leaks, mold, or HVAC issues with real-time alerts that allow you to be proactive. Visit pointcentral.com/VRMB to learn more. And Breezeway, whose property care and operations platform helps you coordinate, communicate, and verify the detailed work and deliver the best service experience to your guests. With tools for intelligent task scheduling, quality assurance, real-time work coordination, guest messaging, supplies management, owner reporting, and more, oh my! Breezeway helps thousands of short-term rental managers and hospitality operators increase your operational efficiency and eliminate hours of manual work. This allows you to boost your service revenue. It was created by the founding team of Flipkey, which was since acquired by TripAdvisor, and Breezeway is just elevating the experience at every property they touch. Visit breezeway.io/VRMB and get implementation fees waived. That's a $1,000 value right there. Okay, let's get back to the show. And how do you compose yourself? What goes through your head when sharing this information with your team and with your homeowners? Have you done that yet?
Yes, we have. Yeah.
Okay. How did you do it?
Well, with our team, I mean, two of our team were given the information way back at the beginning because we needed. And then they've got knowledge that we don't have, because over the past 3 or 4 years, 5 years, we've been preparing our team for this time. We've been preparing them that at some point we are going to back off. So we gave them so much responsibility. Our office manager, Sandra, she knows more about the business finance than I would ever dream of knowing. So she was involved from the very beginning, and then we told a couple of other team members on the day we sold. But I think because we were able to, the first thing we said was business as usual. You're not going to notice a difference. You're not going to see a change. Change will no doubt happen for the better, but it's going to be gradual, and it's going to be beneficial all around. And that's exactly the same approach we've taken with we took with our homeowners. Is we're so excited to share this news with you because it's going to bring you more occupancy. It's going to bring you more visibility. It's going to bring better systems and processes. You're not going to see anything but benefit from this change. And by the way, we're not going anywhere. We're still here. If you want to pick up the phone and you want to talk to me or Craig, we're still here. That's what this whole approach that Pillar 49 has taken has made so easy for us.
And do you think that someone listening who is not ready to sell their business yet, or maybe is even just getting started, do you think going through almost like a mock sale, almost like an exercise in which you pretend as if you're going to sell the business, or you speak with a broker, or you start familiarizing yourself with these terms that you wouldn't otherwise know? Do you think that that's a healthy thing?
I think it's absolutely essential, from day one. When I was putting together the brochure at the very beginning, and it was, I suppose you could call it an executive summary. And we went through all this, who our staff are, who our owners are, who our guests are, what our niche is. And it was the first time we'd actually really put it down on paper. And I was having aha moments about what we do and how good it is right from the very beginning.
What you've achieved?
And I thought, why did we not do this from the very beginning? And we have every year, annually, you update that, and so that you have all your numbers for the previous year, and you can update your executive summary every single year, and do it in a way that involves the entire team. What do we, I'm sure companies, big companies do this all the time. They get together and they say, what went well? What could we do better? And let's document it all. And I think this is what we hadn't done, was documented it along the way. So I think from the start, from the very start of when you buy your first property, because you don't know where you're going to go with that unless you're absolutely adamant you're only going to have one property. But I know so many people who started with one and now have 50 and had no idea how they got there.
Hmm.
Um, so you start at the very beginning, and after your first year, you analyze everything, but you also have all your documentation in place. And then you update it every year. And it means that when you do come to this point where you're going to sell, go into a partnership, whatever way you want to call it, it's you've got it all there. And so to some degree, it is a dress rehearsal. Um, you need to know what goes on in a buyer's due diligence, and I was blown away by the amount of information they wanted during their due diligence. And I wish I'd had that at the beginning of the company, because I would have kept that all up to date, and it would have probably cut my lawyer's fees down in half. And it would have taken out a lot of angst as well, in terms of the information we had to collect.
Heather, now after 20 years, is there any moment, I'm sure there are many, but perhaps one that you like to share, that you think embodies the greatness of our industry and your business, whether it was an interaction with a guest or a particular achievement, or maybe even just something small that really stands out?
I should say it was a home away conference back in what year was it? 2010.
Oh, was it that far back?
I think it was way back, way back.
Okay.
Yeah, when I met you and
Yep.
met Tyann Marsink, and realized the value of networking, realized the value of the because that was the first time I'd been to an event. Um, and I met such amazing people. You and me and Tyann were giving a presentation, each giving different presentations. I so remember yours. I really remember that one because you had Excel spreadsheets. Um, but yeah, oddly enough, it was. I think a lot of what I've done since then has been pivotal on that time, that conference, because it propelled me into a different world. It propelled me into the world
Mm.
of knowledge and sharing knowledge with other people, because I realized at that time that there was no real knowledge sharing out there that was being done on a wider basis. And really, I came away from that and started the podcast. Um, I came away from that and came back to my business and made changes. And then I developed this network of amazing people in this industry that has continued to grow. And every year, more people come into this network, and they're all much younger these days. But uh,
I oftentimes think about a conversation I had with the owner of a large pharmacy in Central America. And I asked him what represented the single biggest leap in your business growth. And he said that it was very simply when he started attending pharmacy conferences in the USA. And he said, this is not rocket science, but by merely buying a ticket to attend those events and meeting other people like me elsewhere in the world, I simply started copying what they were doing. And it was like I had this secret weapon. And what I take away from that story and also your um, memory of the HomeAway conference is that these things are helpful to attend on a regular basis if you can, but they're especially pivotal at these moments in your career when you are at an inflection point, when you're getting ready to make a leap. And that does not happen every year, but for most of us, it happens every couple years, maybe a little more. And those networking events, in my experience as well, have been the catalysts that take things up a level as well.
yeah, and that's something that I'm not going to stop doing. If I can get up and speak and talk to people and share this story, because I've learned just such a huge amount from this. I want to get out there and do that, and also to get out and listen to what's new, what people are doing. And I always remember going back to the first vacation rental success summit that we did in Toronto, and I remember an attendee coming up at the end and saying, he said, I've never been to anything like this. It was his very first event. I've never been to anything like this, and it was like drinking from a fire hose. He said, I never knew there was this much information out there and that people were willing to share it.
Where did the Vacation Rental Success Summit fit in your vacation rental arc?
Oh, interesting. I think I mean, when we had that idea of Vacation Rental Success Summit, it was for Ontario. That's what we did it for. We wanted to bring more people in to from our own province to come and learn about the business, because I'd talked to so many owners who really had no idea about hospitality. So that's why we started it. And then the fact that that first conference, I think we had 130 people there, and four of them were from Ontario, and the rest came from Brazil. You know, um,
I remember that. And you said, raise your hand if you're from Ontario. And like only a couple people.
yes, yeah. And then Rex came from Australia. Um, and then the following year, we had Diane Denton come from Australia as well.
Mm-hmm.
We did it for 3 years. So I think for us it was an amazing thing to do. If COVID had not come along, we would probably have had one in 2020. Now I'm not so sure. There are so many. It's a bit like the podcast. When I started my podcast, it was the only one, and now there are countless podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when we started the Vacation Rental Success Summit, there was nothing out there for the
Mm.
independent owner, and now you just go into any of the schedules and you're going to see there's at least one a month somewhere. Um, so I think it propelled us. It propelled me towards where I want to be now, which is spending a lot more time on educating people who are growing small businesses. Not so much the independent owner, but who just happy with one place, or Airbnbs. Um, but for those people who are taking that leap into a property management company, that's where I want to be. And I think the Vacation Rental Success Summit just set the foundation for that.
Love that. And what, after now 2 decades, um, biggest mistake would you share with folks that in hindsight, um, you would have done a completely different way?
Oh gosh. I know what it was, and it comes down to property management software. Is we started out at the very beginning with the cheapest and the yeah. I think I can't remember if it was Escapia we looked at way back in 2004, and it was so expensive, and we went with a very inexpensive um, platform, which was fine. It was fine as we got going, but then, and I've always said, that tipping point for us was about 35 properties, when that particular software just wasn't scaling. It didn't allow us to scale in the way that we wanted. So we went on the look for new software, and we went again to something that was inexpensive. We look far too much at cost rather than benefits. And in retrospect, I mean, it's been fine for us. It's been fine for us over the years, but and it served its purpose. But we have, and I've spoken to Terry White about this on numerous occasions, about our tech stack, and we've got all these bolt-on things, and I'm not sure I would say it was a mistake, but I think the mistake was not spending enough time on the research for the property management
Mm.
software, um, and going just for price rather than the benefits that maybe a pricier model was going to bring us. And I know, I'm looking back to 8 or 9 years when we did our last change, um, and there weren't anywhere near as many out there then than there are now. Uh, and of course, we had sort of an abortive attempt at changing to a software that it just didn't work. So we had a bit of a knock at that time as well. Um, but yes, if I tried to do something differently, it would be to do that property management software research thoroughly. I would get that consultancy in, talk to somebody who and pay the money to actually get somebody to really deep dive into the business and work out which was the best one for us from a third party perspective.
And now that you have uh, ultimately settled on a property management software, beyond that, are there any tools that you wish existed, that you wish you had been using like long before you actually adopted them?
Text messaging.
Or did you hold out against texting?
I did, because I was not a texter myself.
Right.
I wasn't a tech. Why do people do this thing? Until and I've said this over and over again, that we took invested in the Breezeway text messaging platform last summer for the first time, and it was like revolutionary. It made such a difference. What else? Digital guidebooks. We are 100% focused on touch state. We love it, but there are other digital guidebooks out there as well. Um, that's something that made the difference, that we could probably have got into a little earlier. I'd been going to conferences for years and looking at all these digital guidebooks, and I think, oh my gosh, glad to have you. Way back before Home Away bought it out, I think we dabbled with that, and we should have gone into it at that time.
There was an episode this season we did with Paul Waldschmidt of OwnerRes, and he explained that their development philosophy was to develop for pain points as opposed to problems that didn't exist yet. And I've heard from a number of our listeners that that really resonated with their property management company, as opposed to choosing a new bell or whistle or toy that can enhance something, rather looking to use technology to solve pain points as a way to build the technology stack. Is that something that resonates with you, or were you willing to try anything?
Oh, I've always been a bright, shiny thing person, you know? Something, I was always, early adopter of absolutely everything. And so much stuff just sits in the bin and by the wayside that's never been used. So I love that concept of pain points. You know, what really, I mean, what one of our pain points for years was logging issues, logging how do we do this? How do we log support issues when a guest has a problem or an owner has a problem, um, and log it so that we could go back and look at it in a year's time and see how it was resolved and use it as learning points. Um, so that was definitely one of our pain points, but I don't think we went far enough to deal with that. And if there was software, property management software that had that fully included, and I'm sure there's a ton of them now, then if we were looking again, we would probably go for that because we have as I say, everything's bolt on. But owner, I've been so interested to see how owners have moved forward. I mean, our last time I interviewed them was about 5 years ago, I think, and it was just a very small operation. And now everywhere you look, people are advocating for owner for the smaller company. Love it.
Well, Heather, you're not going to be doing any property management software demos anytime soon.
No, I always loved them, she says.
I remember the last test I took in college. Before I took it, I looked myself in the mirror and I said, "This is the last test I'm ever going to take in my life," because I hated test taking so much, and they brought me so much stress. And for what? Uh, I even to this day will hear about someone who's studying for a test. I'm like, yes, I don't have to do that ever again. What, Heather, in your line of work, are you thinking about that way that you will never have to do again?
um I think it's I've always been an avoider of conflict. I hate conflict of any sort. I don't like people arguing. I can't watch a movie where people fight. I just can't do it. So the fact that I do not have to pick up the phone and talk to anybody angry anymore that's probably it for me. And I know I've been moving away from that for the last couple of years. And my business partner has really picked up the slack on that one. But I remember last summer having a call with a very angry uh, Irish lady who'd got to a property and she said there was a smell, and the smell was so awful that she and her husband had to leave, and they had to leave immediately. And the owner lived in an adjacent property, although the guest did not know that. Um, and I said, "Look, if you need to leave because of this smell, obviously off you go, and I'll deal with it." And I was able to drove down to the property, and the owner came over, and we went in, and we said, "No, there's no smell. There is absolutely nothing." So figured that they wanted to cancel, they wanted to get out of it, and this was the best way of doing it, was to arrive and say, there's something wrong with it. So I phoned the guest and I said, "Well, the owner came over and myself, we went in there. There was no smell." And she just let rip because I had told the owner and I'd given him the opportunity to go in and eradicate the smell before I got there. And the profanity was off the wall, and the shrieking, the yelling, the tears. And that's what I don't want to do anymore. And I just don't want that, and I don't need to do that anymore.
And from all of these interactions and running the business profitably for so long, where do you prioritize property owners from guests?
Well, we can't do the business without property owners. They're the linchpin. They are our foundation. Um, I and it all comes down to, when we go out and we don't just take on a property, we take on an owner. And the property, and we have turned away properties because the owners don't have that hospitality mindset. So, in prioritizing, we've got to have those three components: the great property, the great owner, and then match them with the great guest. And those three come together and create that, that perfect, um that perfect vacation. um so yeah, I I I can't prioritize one over the other. I think these things all have to come together, and it takes work. It takes work. And sometimes we've had owners that have started out amazingly poorly, and they've turned into the best owners ever. And some have started out enthusiastic and hospitable, and over time have you know, they've lost it along the way, and we have to say goodbye to them, um, because because the guests are going to suffer if we allow that to continue. So it's got to be that perfect marriage of the best owner, the great property, and the matching with the guests who are going to respect the place and love the owner.
And Heather, as the final question of the first podcast, after you sold your business or joined this new partnership, I'm curious, what is your one big wish for our industry moving forward?
You could have warned me about this question. You didn't.
You've had 20 years of preparing.
What's my big wish for the industry? Um, I wish Airbnb would go away. Um, I that's a really tough one, Matt. I wish that the concept of limited edition, which you've developed, becomes more widespread. And as we go forward, we begin to create this different brand, which differentiates, the independence from the run of the mill. Because as the industry becomes more commoditized, and that's going to happen over the next years, there is this, there is the, or there will always be the place for the unique, the individual, the independent, and the spectacular. That's, and I want to see that grow. I know that this whole issue of book direct has, it's a tough one. I've booked a property in Germany for the summer, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find anything that wasn't on Airbnb. That was tough, and I looked really hard. So I know they're probably out there. I just couldn't find them. Um, I wish the limited edition to continue to grow and develop, and people to be focused on creating the best experience for their guests and feeling really comfortable that they can do it in such a way that brings credit to the short-term rental business.
What a beautiful and cathartic discussion. I am so proud of Heather, who has, from the very beginning of her journey, certainly from the moment we first met, done things with integrity and shrewdness and charm. And I was actually a little embarrassed to realize in editing this episode that despite being on Heather's podcast plenty of times over the years, this day in which she sold her vacation rental business was actually the first time I actually had Heather on mine. And I always like to say that relationships are a two-way street. You've got to give in order to get. But in this case, I don't think I gave Heather nearly as much as she has given me. And I'm a little disappointed in myself about that. But I mention it because she never mentioned anything of the sort to me. And that is Heather, and that is her gift. Doing things for other people without expecting anything in return, both publicly on podcasts and privately with her guests and her homeowners and her teammates and her industry colleagues. This is the essence of hospitality, I think. Doing special things without expecting anything in return is literally a way to dismantle the barriers of our world. It's how we can turn things around one interaction at a time. If you resonated with this episode or any episode this season and are inspired to become a first mover in your market, consider dedicating an hour or so and taking our new First Mover Status Workshop. I worked for several months to distill the best examples of first mover strategies featured in this season into 3 core first mover models. Number 1, vertical integrations. Number 2, gold standards, that which will be ubiquitous eventually in your destination. And number 3, passion projects. In the workshop, I walk you through each of them, and I inspire you to settle on your own first mover play in order to differentiate yourself in your market. You can access it at vrmb.com/firstmover.